Is there a strategy that'll help you grow your company faster? CEO Sales Strategies is an investigative business podcast for entrepreneurial people who never stop asking questions. Highly acclaimed sales revenue growth expert Doug C. Brown interviews CEOs, business owners, and professionals who serve them to uncover and share actionable tips and methods behind their bulletproof sales strategies. Topics covered on the show include their failures, struggles, secrets, and processes that help them succeed in selling millions to billions of dollars of their products and services, all with the sole aim of helping you grow your business. If you are eager to know the most effective sales secrets from the A players of the game, then the CEO Sales Strategies podcast is certainly the place to be.
Hey everyone, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies podcast, and I have a great topic for us to talk about: procrastination. What? What do you mean procrastination? Isn't this is a business topic? Yes, it is, believe it or not. You will be surprised, maybe even shocked to find out how many business owners, how many people trying to get into the top 1% of earners who are stuck or feeling kind of bogged down in the mud. They're procrastinating. They don't even know they're doing it in most cases. They don't even have the awareness on and around that. So I brought in an expert. His name is Eric M. Twiggs, Twiggs. He's at ericmtwiggs.com. I brought him in to talk about procrastination because procrastination can stop your revenue. It can make it sluggish. It can prevent us from actually doing the things we know we need to do, but we don't do it. And guess what? Long term, that just bites you. That's simple as it can be. So we're going to talk a lot about why procrastination happens, how it happens, what you can do about it, and how you can eliminate it from your life, or at least the majority of your life. So without further ado, let's go speak to Eric right now. Eric, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. Thanks so much for being here.
Hey, Doug, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on your show.
It was an honor to be on yours too, and I appreciate you having me there. Folks, Eric is I'm going to say preventing procrastination master here. So we will title you as a procrastination prevention partner. How's that, Eric? That work good?
There you go. That sounds great.
So you wrote a book called The Discipline of Now, if I remember the name correctly.
Yes.
And so we're going to talk about the subject here about overcoming procrastination. And why is it so important for us to talk about? Well, you'll hear that more in the exit on the notes. So take notes. But Eric, I'd like to go to you. Why do people procrastinate? They know they're supposed to do this. They just don't do it. Why?
Well, at the root of procrastination is discomfort, right? There's some element or aspect that people that don't have a comfort level with. And the easiest thing to do is nothing when you're not comfortable. So that's at the root. And a lot of times it's not that. Doesn't have to be that complicated or that deep. It could be that, you know what, I just don't like doing the task. So I'm going to avoid it as much as I possibly can. But the key is awareness and really understanding what's triggering you to procrastinate in that particular moment.
So, okay, I know I don't like to do this, but I know it's got to get done. But I keep pushing it off and pushing it off and pushing it off. And then something unpleasant happens even more than if I would have done it in the first place. Right? That's traditionally what I think happens with procrastination, right? I mean, I'm a sales professional. I know I'm supposed to get back to this client. I know they're going to be upset, but I'm not getting back. My customer service department is not getting back. It's going to turn into a disaster. Why, though? Why? I mean, okay, I get it at the root. It's discomfort, but why don't people what is preventing them from actually doing that? Is it fear? Is it something else? In other words, it's logic, right? You got to get back to the client, but they don't.
Well, it's a combination of things. There's no one answer, right? So it's in the instance that you bring up where if it's call reluctance, it could be a fear of, not getting to the result. What if I make these calls and I don't hit my quota? I don't, I'm not going to get the promotion. I'm not going to move the business forward. It could be not wanting to have an uncomfortable conversation. Let's say if it's a follow-up issue and maybe the customer is going to say something that, oh man, this is going to be difficult. So discomfort once again. But the key again, a lot of times people are just walking around unaware and they don't realize that they're getting triggered whenever it's time to make this call. And if you are aware, you could put certain things in place to make it happen.
So how do people become aware then?
Well, just pay attention to your patterns, right? And so like people always say, well, Eric, I always procrastinate. No, that's not the case. Like I've yet to meet someone who procrastinates all the time. What I have met is people who in their home life, they're just spot on. They do everything as scheduled. And then when they get to work and it's time to make that call, they start procrastinating. Or at work, they're on point with everything. And then when they get home or they get in another area of their life, so the key thing is to pay attention to the patterns. And it may help to have a coach, life coach, business coach, who can point that out to you. I mean, I can tell you, for example, during the sessions I have with entrepreneurs, with CEOs, and there'll be several weeks in a row when someone says, oh yeah, I didn't get around to doing that. Yeah, I just, and I'll stop them right there. Okay, well, tell me, what are you afraid of? And then they get really quiet. And it turns out there's something, it's not really the reason they were telling me. There's something that's beneath the surface that we haven't talked about yet. So just really paying attention to the patterns and reach out for help. Get a coach where it applies.
So we're speaking with Mr. Eric Twiggs, ericmtwiggs.com. He wrote a book called The Discipline Now. Really, I loved your title that you told me, Procrastination Prevention Partner. I thought that was the greatest title. All right, let's talk about triggers, because we all have triggers of some sort. I mean, folks, what's a trigger? You're driving down the road, somebody throws you the middle finger, you lose your mind, right? That's a trigger.
Sure.
Right? I don't know. Maybe they were pointing at the sun. You thought there was something else. We got triggered off. We went into a fit of how dare you, and then off it goes, right? But we all have triggers. But what causes a procrastination trigger? Is it like stem from our childhood, or where do these triggers come from?
Well, again, I think it's just discomfort. It's something. So the number one, like when I do these workshops and I talk about what causes people to procrastinate, what triggers people the most, fear always comes up. Like I don't bring it up. It always comes up as the number one thing that makes people to causes people to procrastinate. So you have the fear of success, fear of failure, the fear of the unknown. Believe it or not, fear of success is extremely common. People they're afraid of what the next level will demand of them, and will they measure up to what will be required. So I can do a speech, man. If it does, if it goes well, I may be asked to do this again and again. I may not be able to deliver again and again. What is this going to mean? So I would say fear is one of the most common reasons that people delay things.
I just had to go to the dentist, and no disrespect to all the dentists listening or anybody who has married to a dentist. I don't like going to dentist, right? It's never have, never will. When I was a little boy, I had to have a tooth extracted. I was wrestling with a friend. He kneed me in the mouth by accident, or maybe on purpose. I'm not sure. My tooth had to come out. They popped a needle in my mouth. Ever since that, I just haven't liked the dentist. So I put off going to the dentist for a year and a half. Right. And I'm like, I'm getting a little pain in a tooth. I'm like, I don't want to go. Right. So it's fear. I don't want to fear that feeling again. And so, I put it off. Lo and behold, kind of gets to a point now where I'm like, I can't take it anymore. I go to the dentist and they go, if you had to come in 6 months ago, we wouldn't have to do a root canal, but now we have to do a root canal. Right. So, I want to hit on this point on the fear of success, because I see that a lot too amongst CEOs, salespeople, business owners, coaches, consultants, whatever, right? They're afraid that when they get to a certain level, that if they go past that, then they're outpacing something. In other words, maybe they're not going to be accepted by their family any longer because now they're making, $2 million a year or whatever it might be. It might be that they never really wanted to do this in the first place, but they got to keep going to keep an image, right? And so they're kind of living this untruth. So I'm curious, where do you think fears come from? Like, are they rooted in something? I mean, this may not be a fair question. We're talking about procrastination, but the reality is, I'm curious, where do you think fear does come from?
Well, I think it's a normal response, right? I think just from over time, if our ancestors from back in the day, you had saber-toothed tigers, so I think it's just kind of a natural thing that everybody has some level of fear. And fear isn't necessarily bad, right? Fear can keep you safe. Fear could be helpful if you're walking by a lion's den. You may think, I'm afraid to keep going because something bad can happen. But the challenge is, again, if you're not aware and fear isn't used constructively and it keeps you from moving forward. With the fear of success, one of the things I instruct people to do or suggest to people to do is that the be, do, have formula, right? So if I can become more, I can do more. Then if I can do more, I can ultimately have more. So always focusing on improving yourself and getting better. And there's something else that's out there. It's an imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
That's also at the root. Because I've met a lot of highly successful people that really feel like, they're a fraud. They don't really have the goods and someone's going to find out. I think that person is more likely to suffer from the fear of success. But which you have, one of the reasons that people suffer from this fear is that certain things come natural to them. And they think it's them getting lucky. But they don't understand that that's a thing. That's an attribute. For example, some people are great listeners and they can really connect with people. And they think of it as just, oh, that's nothing. But they keep advancing because of it. And they don't really understand that that's one of the things that's fueling their success. So I think I think everybody's gone through some level of imposter syndrome, but you can't really, sometimes we discount some of our positive attributes, and that's what causes that whole thing can lead to fear of success.
One of the biggest challenges that I find that people who are not in the top 1% earners and people who are in the top 1% earners, the top 1% earners have identified exactly what you said. They use their strengths in order to get to that point, but they're also truly authentic.
Yes.
Right. They know their own identity and they're not afraid to talk about it. Where other people I find who aren't making that kind of money, i.e., in the top 1%, they're afraid of their own authenticity because they've never identified it.
Right.
And so, or they're, like you said, a fear of judgment, maybe in the case of a fear of, maybe they messed up, I love this, Eric, because I talk to so many, business people and people who look up to these business people and these, moguls or, semi-famous or famous people. And they go, oh my gosh, I would love to have what they have. And I'd ask them, how many failures do they think that person's had before they've actually become that entity in which you are now, putting up as an idol up there, a mentor. And it gets them thinking a lot because they don't think that these people who are very successful have gone through all of this fear challenging process that you're talking about. And most of them who have challenged their fears now become far more authentic. And so therefore they're far more effective. And so I want to talk about coaching because coaching is a really important part of this. I have found you can read all the books you want. You have a great book. I have books, read books. You can get information. You can watch videos, you can do all that stuff, and you can get some good stuff and you can make some progress and movement with that. Like I tend to listen to like Oprah Winfrey every morning, So Oprah, if you're ever listening to this, thank you. But what I have found is the biggest gains ever in my life have come from coaching or having someone else like yourself look at me and go, Doug, you really don't have a full head of hair, right? I mean, it's one of those type of things. Right? No matter how much you want to wave your hands across your head, there's no Goldilocks there, right? So I think coaching is the great differentiator amongst a lot of people who are extremely successful and those who are not. And I've listened to some people actually say that the one thing that if they wish they had have done differently is they would have got help sooner. So what about the value of coaching from your perspective? What does it give people?
Well, it's huge because we all have aspects of ourselves that we just can't see. You talk about awareness. I don't think anybody can be 100% self-aware just because we all have blind spots. So it takes a coach, someone that's outside of you, to be able to point that out and bring that to your attention. And the other thing, like for me, the coaches I've had, they were all big thinkers. Like I remember I had this coach. I'm going to go ahead and shout her out. Her name is Dr. Sonia Stribling, and she's spoken with Les Brown and she's done a lot of big things, but she is a big thinker. And like, no matter what I said, she was always challenging me to that next level. So if I said, hey, doctor, I'm thinking of charging this for my program. Oh, no, you need to charge more than that. No, you need to charge this. And I'm like, I can't charge these people. And then I would go with her suggestion and the client would say, okay. And she wins again, right? Yeah. But a coach will challenge you to really think bigger than you're currently thinking, because a lot of times a great coach will have a perspective that you don't currently have.
So I want to go back to fear of success then. You get a coach. They're constantly, and by the way, I agree with you 100%. The best coaches I've ever had are, sometimes I've actually said to them, I don't like you, right? It's like,
exactly.
But when I look at the year-end numbers, year over year, the years I've had coaches in my corner and the years I haven't, you can see the growth is like 17%, 46%, it's just like huge numbers, because they look at the blind spots differently, right? They're not seeing blind spots. And, you and I, Eric, we're driving in a car down the street. We're having a good time, right? Somebody pulls up next to us and they roll down the window and they're pointing at our car and they're going, hey, hey, hey. And we go, what? We roll down the window. They go, you got 2 flat tires happening on the side of the car, right? And we sure as heck pull over and 2 tires are low, right?
Right.
But you and I mean, we're just jamming out to whatever was on the tunes and we're having a great time together. So the perception from inside the car or outside the car is very different. That's what I found coaching to be a huge benefit for people. Now, if you have a coach, though, it's challenging you to the next level, and you got fear of success, is that going to trigger off potentially?
It's possible, but a good coach can bring that to your attention and help you to overcome that. A good coach can show you some of those patterns like that and bring it to your attention that, hey, I'm noticing that every time we talk about this next level, you react the same way. And so and they can heighten your awareness so that you can ultimately get past that. Like when I think about coaching, in the sports world, there's all this talk about the GOAT, right? The greatest of all time.
Tom Brady,
LeBron James, Michael Jordan, who's the GOAT. But if you look at those individuals, they all had a great coach. Anybody that you're considering the greatest of all time, they had a great coach. Tom Brady had Bill Belichick. Michael Jordan had Phil Jackson. That's not a coincidence.
Right.
And I think coaching is just so underestimated. I think in the business world, it's the same thing. If you want to be a GOAT in business, I think it requires having a great coach.
And I will add an idea to that, which is more than one.
Yes.
Because I have a great coach in business development per se.
Mm-hmm.
I have another great coach in personal development, right? Because the personal development will call me out on my own stuff, or the business development will call me out on the business stuff and sometimes catch the personal stuff, right? But usually business problems, I have found for everyone, not just myself, are personal issues.
100%.
And those personal issues generally come down to fear.
Yes.
And I don't know what we all fear. But like you said, fear is good, fear is bad, right? I mean, it depends on how you use fear. I think that's really what it comes down to. Well, how one uses fear is going to determine the outcome. You're either going to go down the left road or the right road, or you're going to just stand still. That's pretty much what fear will do to people that I know. Sometimes people back up. That's the other thing too. But the reality is how we use it is going to determine how we view it. And what I love about what you said about coaching is, and it's interesting because I'm writing down these keywords and you keep saying these keywords. Like as soon as I write them down, you're like saying this keyword. It's like, awareness was one of those, right? And that awareness, if we can't create awareness, we are never going to break a pattern. So the first key I have found, and no matter what it is in business, especially with top 1%, is because you can get people like in the top 3%, right, of income or whatever, and they can't get to the top 1% or 2%, top 1%. It's usually a trigger that's stopping them from getting there.
Yes.
And they are procrastinating on something that you would just zero in on and go, hey, I've been noticing this pattern, and what are they going to do? They can't deny it, right? Well, they can. That's the ultimate fear, I guess. But the reality is you can zero in on that. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now we're aware. Now what do we want to do about it?
Yes.
And so for all of you listening, we're speaking with Mr. Eric M. Twiggs, with 2 G's, correct, Eric?
2 G's, 1 S.
1S.com. We're talking about procrastination and how procrastination will it's either going to control you or you control it, really, when it comes down to it. And Eric is the procrastination prevention partner. He's an expert in that. Wrote a book called The Discipline, and now I recommend you check out the book for sure. So, all right. So we got awareness. We know it's fear. We know we shouldn't be doing it. Sometimes we do it anyways. We need to have somebody else point it out.
Mm-hmm.
Once I get there and I'm like, okay, I got the awareness. I got that. What's the next step?
Well, again, you need to be clear on where it is you're trying to go, right? And then I say in the book that clarity is a starting point of success. So you need to know where your North Star is. And then if fear is what's holding you back, once you overcome the fear, then you need to be taking what's the next step you can take. And if I'm coaching someone, I'm like, okay, based off what we talked about today, what are your priorities between now and next week? What are we going to do to move forward? Right. But we need to have the North Star in mind, once we overcome the fear.
I'd like to add a thought to that. We have to be truthful on that North Star. Right. So that's what I found. I mean, sometimes sometimes CEOs and business owners are funny people, right? It's like they're doing 100 million. They want to go to 200 million, let's say, right? That type of thing. They're doing, I don't know, $500,000. They want to get to 5 million, but they really don't, right? They're $500,000. They're netting 50%. They want to make $1 million. So they need to get their business to 2 million, but they keep driving it to 5 million and they're stressed out of their mind and they can't figure out why.
Yeah.
I have found some companies have actually, where I've talked with them, have actually cut back their revenue and they're happy as ever can be, right? Because now they don't have the 300 employees. They've only got 100 employees. And, and miraculously, their profitability goes up a lot of times when they do that too, right? So when they start
Interesting. Yeah.
So they got to their North Star. They know where they're going to go. And I 100% agree with you. What was Steve Covey, I think, wrote the book. And he started with, begin with the end in mind.
Begin with the end in mind. Yeah.
And it's, if someone doesn't know where they truthfully want to go, and they start moving in that direction, then they're going to create fear. I mean, it's really that simple. I was listening to Oprah Winfrey this morning, and she was talking about this subject. So that's one part of the reason I'm bringing it up. And I think what you're bringing up is so key. So they get truthfully to the North Star. They know where they want to go. They've got the awareness. So there's no more, it's not there anymore. The emperor doesn't have clothes on. He's, right, that type of thing. Right. What do they do next?
So again, I mean, you have to focus on what's the next steps that you can take, right? And the steps don't have to be big. It could be small, but we need to make sure that what we're doing is moving us in that direction and getting aligned with where it is that we're trying to go. And then as far as making sure that you're clear, I mean, I totally agree. I totally agree with that. Sometimes you have to, I've done this with people. Why do you want that? You know, why? Just keep asking why, and you get down to the root. And sometimes you can find out that maybe they can get what they really want without everything that comes with, you know, having a $50 million business, right? They can get it with less revenue. Right. They think that, you know, the revenue is going to solve all their problems, this and that, but it can really add to their problems if, right, you know, depending on the systems that they have in place.
Right. Because eventually that takes their identity.
Yep.
That's what I've found. So when their identity gets to a place and it's like, oh, well, I don't know myself. I'm not truthfully at my North Star, but I got a $50 million company. So if I make it 60 million, I'll feel even better. And then they get to 60 and they're like, I think Tony Robbins said, is this all there is? Like, and they get to 60 and it's like, well, maybe I need to get to 80. And they keep driving and driving and driving. And in the meantime, the rest of their life is falling apart on the other side because they're so lost in that process. So I think what happens when people procrastinate and they don't head it off early enough, it actually kind of spiders into a whole bunch of other stuff like a root canal and 2 crowns and, you know, all this stuff that I had to go through just recently. So I think your message is really, really sound. And I love what you said, small steps. So, you know, like with the dentist, I've scheduled 2. I'm going to get 3 cleanings a year. Right?
Yeah.
Small steps, right? So maybe when I get into the dentist office, I don't know, I have this happy hygienist or whatever, and then I start liking the dentist a little bit more. But if I never take those steps,
right,
I will never get into that process. So what I'm hearing is no matter what your fear is, we got to take steps toward it to at least embrace it. We don't have to confront it per se, but we have to at least embrace it. And if you're creating that safety net, what you're doing in coaching for people, creating the safety net, then people, it's not, you know what, Eric, here's the weird part. I don't know about everybody in life, but I know myself. Most of the fears that I've had that I procrastinated on were way smaller than I made them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. A lot of times the thing, when you look back, it worked out fine. You were worried about it. Oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? But see, so the big thing too is that people feel like they have to have everything. Let's say you set the goal, right?
Yeah.
You're clear on the beat, but sometimes it's doubt because you're like, man, I really do that. I don't. You're not going to have it 100% figured out ever, right? And that's why in the military they talk about you have to be able to act with imperfect action. And some people feel like they need, imperfect information. And some people feel like they need to have all the details to really move forward, but it's really just about making progress. And I say you can't allow perfect to become the enemy of progress. That's the key with this whole moving forward thing. You don't have to have it all 100% figured out.
I love that. Making progress. Everybody write that one down if you listen, right? Because that is true. If we make a little bit of progress, we gain a little more confidence. We gain a little more assurance. We're now creating certainty in our life, which will lower those fears. So if we're making just a little progress, and I've always said this publicly, and I'll say it again on this podcast, no matter what your goal is, it usually takes you 2 to 3 times longer, and it usually costs you 2 to 3 times more than you figure it was going to take you to get to that goal.
Oh, amen.
So,
but here's the thing, though. Confidence comes when you consistently keep the promises that you make to yourself, right? So you start to get more confident when you develop this habit of doing the thing that you said you're going to do and taking the actions you said you were going to take. So that helps to overcome the fear when you start to feel more confident and start feeling better about yourself. And then the funny thing, like, we've all heard about dopamine, right? Dopamine is the feel good hormone, where you actually increase dopamine when you're working towards a worthy goal, when you feel like you're making progress. So you actually will start feeling better. So those are some things to think about, and that whole idea of the small steps can really help you to move forward.
That's awesome. So consistently keeping your promises to yourself.
Yep.
that is what makes us continuously move forward in progress.
Yep.
That progress will increase our confidence. Our confidence will then increase our ability to go, I can take something on a little bigger than this if I decide to, or, hey, I'm satisfied. I got here. That's where it is. And so if you can continuously do that and keep your promises, that puts us into what, a flow state? I mean, we're kind of just flowing along, right, at that point?
Yeah, because you're starting to build momentum,
Yeah.
right? You're starting to track the wins. And that's why I'm like, I know people like Jerry Seinfeld had got to a point where he had the big chart on his wall with the calendar. And his thing was every day I've got to write at least one joke, right? That he would have it marked. And so he would start to see the string, hey, I'm on a roll. And it just builds momentum and builds confidence when you're consistent.
And I've never talked to Mr. Seinfeld, but I would assume that not 364.5 jokes he wrote, that not all of them were really off the charts good. But what does he need per show? 30? You know what I mean?
But just that habit of just consistently. And the other thing too, here's something that's not talked about enough. Consistency is a differentiator.
How so?
Because most people aren't consistent. I mean, even with podcasts, right? The typical podcast lasts anywhere from 14 to 25 episodes.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's a war of attrition. If you could consistently put the episodes out, you're going to be ahead of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so that's why consistency is critical.
It's a great thing you brought up podcasts, because a lot of people listening, they're like, oh, I'll start a podcast, right? And they go, what's the number one thing you should know about starting a podcast? It's a long game. And what does that mean? You better be prepared for a year or two before you think you're even going to start to see results out of your podcast. And so that's why I think people quit, because they're not getting the results they're looking for immediately, that sugar high, if you will, from their process. But they're not being truthful about their North Star goal. They figure they're just going to throw this out there. They want new clients. It's not going to work, but they're not in it for the long term. That's what I have found, Eric, on the process. So Eric, let's say somebody's sitting here and going, I'm a procrastinator. I should wear the T-shirt, and they go, this Eric guy's pretty smart. How do I find out more about him? Or, where do they go? What do they do?
They can go to my website, ericmtwiggs.com, and you can pick up a copy of the book there, The Discipline of Now, 12 Practical Principles to Overcome Procrastination. You can also click a link and start listening to episodes of the 30-minute-hour podcast. So that's my central hub there, ericmtwiggs.com.
And he's got a great podcast, folks. He has great guests. I know one of them.
Man, we had this fantastic guest. His name was Doug.
Doug Smith? Yeah. That's funny.
No, that was actually a great episode, in all seriousness.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I also appreciate you being here and bringing the A game here to the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. I'll put all the show notes in there for everybody. Eric, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Consistently keep your promises to yourself. Wow, that was a big aha moment for me, right? Because we all have fear. Now, whether fear controls us or we align with it and make it our friend, or we control it, that's up to us. It's all between our ears, as is said, right? It's in our nervous system. It's the way our brain works. It's the way we process information. I have found it is a habitual thing that you learn these traits early on in life. You carry them on into adulthood thinking, man, I'm an adult. I don't have these childhood tendencies any longer. And guess what? Yep, you do. Not a lot of fun. You're supposed to do something. You kind of keep putting it off. I use the dentist analogy and because that was a true thing from my life that just recently happened. But, there's other things that you put off as well. When you put them off in your business, they will come back to bite you most of the time. So if you know that you're running short on leads, for example, and you've got to go out there and generate new business, but you're procrastinating on that, it will bite you. How is it going to bite you? You have up and down cycles in your revenue, in your monies that you're making. So if you're having up and down fluctuations, you're probably procrastinating on doing what that you should do. So when is now the best time to actually get out of procrastination? Now, here's the thing about procrastination, as Eric said, it's really difficult to do it on your own. You can listen to podcasts like this, you can listen to books, tapes, whatever. You can read books, you can do anything you want. But remember, you're coming at it from your own frame. When you come at it from your own frame, well, you're seeing your own face in the frame, in the picture. When you have outside help, coaching, training, something out where you can get feedback, active, constructive feedback, it changes the frame, because no longer are you the only solo in the frame. You've got other people outside the frame looking in going, why do you have this in your picture frame? And that awareness starts to spark a reality of, okay, didn't know that was there. I didn't know it was there. Now I know how to deal with it. And you work through that in the coaching process. If you like this subject matter, please give it a 5-star review. If this will help someone, please pass it to someone else. The more people that hear this, the more people we help. That's why we started this podcast. As I said in previous podcasts, this podcast was started on a double dare. And it was just something that came about. Somebody double dared me to do it. I did it. And it's worked out great for a lot of people who send in information saying, hey, I really appreciate the content. If you're an expert in something, you think it'll fit this show, you know somebody else who's an expert, you think it will fit the show, their expertise, send an email in to YouMatter, YOUMATTER, at ceosalesstrategies.com, and we'll interview that person. We'll look it over, we'll get back and let them know, or let you know. And if we can have you on the show, we'll be certainly willing to do so. If you want to be in the top 1% of earners, in other words, you know, you're selling today, you own your own company, you don't own your own company, you're working for somebody, you have a team of people, but you want them to get into that top 1% and learn what it takes to be in the top 1%. We are rolling out a training program called the 1% Academy in this year of 2023. If you'd like more information or you want to talk about it, Doug at ceosalesstrategies.com. That's DOUG at ceosalesstrategies.com. And let us know what you're looking for, and we'll have a conversation and see if it's for you. Until next time, go out and sell something. Sell a lot of it. Sell it and play win-win, but sell it profitably. They win, you win, everybody's happy. That's how you garner and you get more referrals. Until next time, to your success.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. What is something that you learned that you could act on today? Don't forget to schedule it now, or it may never get forward momentum. If you find our content valuable, please leave a favorable review and let us know what you liked. Please also share this with others if the content will help them. For our show notes, other episodes, and more interesting content and resources, please visit ceosalesstrategiespodcast.com. See you soon, and to your continued success.